Beloved, today the heavens have opened to speak directly into your life. God spoke a word that is not for tomorrow or next year, but for January 25, a day that carries divine acceleration, a day that holds the keys to sudden, unexpected wealth. This is not a promise based on wishful thinking or fleeting hope. This is a prophetic declaration from the Spirit of the living God. He is calling you to prepare yourself, your mind, your spirit, your heart, and even your actions for blessings that will arrive with swiftness and power. He is inviting you to step into a season where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where your diligence meets His divine favor, and where doors you never imagined will swing wide open. God is asking, will you respond in faith? Will you align yourself with His timing and His purpose? Your preparation today will determine the measure and impact of the wealth that is coming. This is a moment for intentionality, for obedience, and for stepping out of delay and into manifestation. This is the hour to plant, to sow, to align your expectations with His promises. The Spirit is urging you not to be passive, not to be distracted, but to activate every part of your life in readiness for sudden prosperity. Positioning yourself spiritually for sudden wealth begins with the recognition that God does not bless recklessly or without purpose. There is always a spiritual posture required to receive what is divinely ordained. You must begin by examining your heart, identifying areas of disobedience, compromise, or distraction that might hinder the flow of blessing. God's wealth is not simply about accumulation, it is about alignment, and alignment requires intentional preparation. Start by cultivating a consistent prayer life, a discipline that tunes your spirit to the frequency of heaven. Through prayer, you open channels that allow divine wisdom, strategy, and insight to guide your decisions. Beyond prayer, immerse yourself in the Word, studying passages that reinforce God's principles of prosperity and stewardship. Understand that wealth is always tied to responsibility and discernment. Spiritual positioning also involves a transformation of thought patterns. You must replace fear, doubt, and resignation with faith, expectation, and declaration. The mind is the battlefield where many lose their spiritual inheritance, so feed it with affirmations of God's promises, meditate on scriptures that affirm abundance, and reject thoughts that contradict His word. Gratitude is a key part of spiritual readiness, for when you recognize and give thanks for what God has already provided, you create a fertile soil where more blessing can grow. In every area of life, look for opportunities to exercise generosity, for giving is a powerful indicator that you understand the cycle of divine provision. As you practice generosity, you are effectively sending a signal to heaven that you are prepared to handle increase. Spiritual positioning is also reflected in your relationships and your environment. Surround yourself with people who encourage faith, wisdom, and positive action, and remove influences that foster negativity, envy, or limitation. Discipline in daily habits also plays a critical role, for wealth cannot flow into chaos or neglect. Evaluate your routines, prioritize what aligns with God's purposes, and let go of distractions that consume time without producing value. Fasting, while often associated with humility and spiritual breakthrough, is a practice that sharpens focus, deepens insight, and strengthens your alignment with God's timing. Through fasting, you demonstrate that your dependence is on God and not on earthly circumstances, which positions you to receive His favor. Another crucial aspect of preparation is forgiveness and release. Unresolved anger, resentment, or bitterness can act as a spiritual block to sudden favor. Make peace where necessary, extend grace where needed, and ensure your heart is clear to receive the new season of abundance. Examine your financial principles, too, and make sure your stewardship aligns with God's instruction. Sudden wealth is not a license for recklessness, but an opportunity for kingdom-minded expansion. Consider how you will manage, multiply, and deploy the resources that are about to come into your life, for wisdom and planning are part of spiritual readiness. Be alert to divine instructions in ordinary situations, for God often positions people, opportunities, and strategies in ways that seem coincidental but are actually orchestrated. Listen carefully to the promptings of the Spirit, for these are the guides that will help you move decisively when doors open. Faith is not passive, it is active, expectant, and obedient. Declare with confidence that you are ready, that you are positioned, and that you are prepared to walk into the manifestation of wealth that God has spoken over your life. Remember, spiritual positioning is not just about waiting. It is about preparing your entire life to receive, manage, and multiply what is coming. It is about cultivating the discipline, the mindset, and the heart that can handle sudden, supernatural increase. As you stand ready, you are inviting God to do what only He can do, transforming your financial season in a way that surpasses human understanding, demonstrating that prosperity is a reflection of divine alignment and not merely human effort, that the kingdom of God operates on principles far higher than earthly calculation, and that sudden wealth is always preceded by intentional spiritual preparation, clarity of vision, obedience to divine instructions, discipline in personal and financial matters, faith-filled expectation, and an unwavering heart that trusts God's timing and His promises. Recognizing and releasing limiting beliefs about money is one of the most critical steps toward experiencing the sudden wealth that God has prepared for you. These beliefs often begin in childhood, rooted in what we saw, heard, or were taught about finances, success, and worthiness. They can take the form of thoughts like, I will never be rich, money is the root of evil, I don't deserve abundance, or I am not capable of managing wealth. Each of these ideas, whether spoken by others or internalized through repeated exposure, acts like a spiritual and mental barrier that restricts the flow of divine blessing. The first step is to become aware of these beliefs by examining your inner dialogue, noticing the recurring thoughts that undermine confidence, and identifying patterns of fear or limitation in your financial decisions. Once you recognize these barriers, you must confront them with the truth of God's Word, because every limitation rooted in lies can be dismantled by divine revelation. Declare that you are a child of the Most High, that wealth is a tool for kingdom advancement, and that you are equipped to handle and steward abundance responsibly. Visualization is a powerful tool in this process. Imagine yourself living in financial freedom, making wise choices, and seeing your resources multiplied beyond expectation. Repetition of positive declarations and affirmations reinforces your belief system and rewires your subconscious to align with God's promises. It is also essential to identify any fear-based behaviors tied to scarcity, such as hoarding, procrastination, avoidance, or hesitation to take risks when opportunities present themselves. These behaviors are often fueled by limiting beliefs and prevent the practical steps necessary to receive wealth. Step by step, replace fear with faith, hesitation with action, and scarcity with a mindset of abundance. Recognize that every negative thought you allow to persist diminishes your ability to see and seize divine opportunities, and every positive, faith-filled thought strengthens your capacity to receive. Prayer and meditation are vital as they allow you to release old narratives and invite God to rewrite your financial story. Ask for wisdom to discern which beliefs are holding you back and for courage to reject them completely. Journaling can also help clarify the areas in which you feel stuck or unworthy, providing a tangible method to confront and dismantle these internal obstacles. Surround yourself with voices and influences that reinforce abundance rather than limitation, and avoid those that echo negativity, envy, or despair. Reading scriptures on prosperity, stewardship, and divine favor will reinforce your understanding that God's intention is for you to thrive, and that sudden wealth is not a betrayal of spiritual integrity, but a manifestation of obedience and alignment. Accountability partners or mentors who embody financial wisdom can also help identify blind spots and challenge you to think beyond your current limitations. Recognize that releasing limiting beliefs is not a one-time event, but a continuous process. Every day presents new thoughts, influences, and challenges that must be evaluated and aligned with truth. Forgive yourself for past mistakes, setbacks, or mismanagement of resources, because holding on to guilt or shame reinforces scarcity thinking. Replace guilt with gratitude for lessons learned, understanding that God can turn every setback into a setup for supernatural favor. Spiritual practices such as fasting, intercessory prayer, and worship also help break strongholds that bind the mind and soul to limitation, creating space for divine ideas, solutions, and opportunities to flow. Be attentive to the subtle promptings of the Spirit, as these often guide you toward the exact decisions, investments, and actions that align with sudden wealth. Begin to make practical, faith-driven financial decisions that reinforce your new belief system, such as budgeting, investing, or exploring new income streams with courage and discernment. Remember that wealth begins in the mind and spirit before it manifests materially. What you believe, declare, and act upon spiritually will eventually appear in your circumstances. Every affirmation of abundance, every rejection of scarcity, and every conscious alignment with God's promises strengthens the spiritual and mental channels through which sudden wealth can flow. Trust that God is able to remove every obstacle, break every limiting pattern, and replace it with clarity, confidence, and divine strategy. Understand that your beliefs about money are a direct reflection of your expectation and faith. If you expect lack, you will attract delay. But if you align your mind and heart with God's abundance, you are creating a fertile ground for sudden, miraculous increase to enter your life, reinforcing that your financial reality is shaped by the thoughts, convictions, and faith-filled decisions you nurture, and that release from limitation is an ongoing, intentional commitment to believing, declaring, and living as one who is chosen, worthy, and ready to walk into divine wealth. Activating divine timing through prayer and fasting is one of the most powerful ways to position yourself for sudden wealth. For God's favor operates on His schedule and not on human convenience. And understanding this principle separates those who receive blessings from those who wait in vain. Prayer is the channel through which you synchronize your life with heaven's agenda, aligning your thoughts, intentions, and actions with God's perfect plan. It is not merely a ritual or a routine, but an intentional act of connecting with the Creator who orchestrates seasons, opens doors, and releases sudden favor. To activate divine timing, you must cultivate a deep, consistent prayer life that goes beyond asking for material provision. You must pray for wisdom, discernment, clarity, and sensitivity to the Spirit's leading in every decision and opportunity. Prayer is also an act of surrender, acknowledging that you do not control the timing or the manner of your increase, but that God's timing is flawless and perfect. Fasting amplifies prayer by creating a spiritual focus that heightens awareness and tunes your spirit to receive divine insight. It is a tool that removes distractions, refines your heart, and demonstrates your dependence on God rather than on earthly resources. Through fasting, your spirit becomes more sensitive to promptings, nudges, and opportunities that others may overlook, and you begin to notice synchronicities and alignments that signal God's hand at work. During this time, it is critical to maintain consistency, for sporadic or half-hearted efforts rarely produce breakthrough. Set aside dedicated time each day for prayer and fasting, even if it is only a small portion of the day, and commit to fully engaging your spirit, mind, and body in the process. Be intentional in your declarations and confessions, speaking faith-filled words over your finances, career, and opportunities. Declare that doors that have been closed will now open, that resources will flow supernaturally, and that you are positioned to receive sudden wealth. Keep a journal to track insights, dreams, impressions, and confirmations, because God often speaks through subtle indicators that require attention and reflection. Understand that activating divine timing also requires patience and obedience. You must be willing to wait for the perfect moment to act, trusting that a delay is not denial but a period of preparation that ensures maximum impact. Avoid rushing decisions based on fear, pressure, or impatience, and instead cultivate a posture of expectancy and readiness. Prayer and fasting also teach discipline, which is essential for handling sudden wealth responsibly. The spiritual rigor you develop during this time prepares you to steward resources wisely, make strategic choices, and avoid impulsive or destructive behaviors that could compromise your breakthrough. Surround yourself with accountability, mentors, or prayer partners who can encourage you, provide guidance, and reinforce faith as you navigate this season. Be attentive to God's instructions in both obvious and subtle ways, recognizing that divine timing often comes with specific steps you must take to align with the flow of increase. Practice gratitude daily for the breakthroughs that are already on their way, acknowledging small victories and signs of favor, because gratitude multiplies blessings and signals to heaven that you are prepared to receive more. Avoid distraction from fear, doubt, negativity, or conflicting voices that undermine your faith, and instead immerse yourself in environments, communities, and content that reinforce belief in God's timing and provision. Recognize that prayer and fasting are not magic formulas, but tools to cultivate intimacy with God, sharpen spiritual sensitivity, and position your life for supernatural acceleration. Each day that you engage in this spiritual discipline, you are creating alignment between your faith and God's purpose, making yourself a vessel ready to receive sudden wealth when it arrives. Treat this time as sacred, investing fully in the preparation rather than merely anticipating the result. For the breakthrough will be most powerful when it comes to those who have positioned themselves through intentional spiritual discipline. Expect that God will coordinate circumstances, open doors, and orchestrate encounters in ways that surpass human understanding, and that these divine appointments are activated through consistent, faith-driven prayer and fasting. Recognize that your actions during this season, your dedication, your focus, and your obedience are shaping the conditions for a financial acceleration that is both sudden and lasting. And that divine timing is the key that unlocks what human effort alone cannot achieve, reinforcing the principle that prosperity is not a matter of luck or chance, but of alignment with God's schedule, responsiveness to His Spirit, and the willingness to prepare in ways that transcend ordinary understanding, ensuring that your life is poised to receive favor, increase, and sudden wealth in a manner that is divinely orchestrated, strategically timed, and spiritually fortified. Preparing your mind for abundance, not scarcity, is a crucial step in receiving sudden wealth because the thoughts you nurture determine the reality you experience. And God often releases blessings into a mindset that is ready to receive them. Many people live in a cycle of limitation because their minds have been conditioned to expect lack, fear, or struggle, and until these patterns are transformed, abundance will seem distant, delayed, or even impossible. To prepare your mind for abundance, you must first become aware of the thoughts, words, and beliefs that have dominated your mental space. Examine the language you use when you speak about finances, opportunities, and your future. Statements like, "I can't afford it," "I'll never get ahead," or "this is too good to be true," are indicators that your mind is wired for scarcity, and they create energetic resistance to God's provision. Replace these thoughts with faith-filled declarations that affirm God's promises and the reality of your increase. Speak words of expectation, abundance, and prosperity daily, and meditate on the truth that God's plans for you are to prosper, not to harm, and to give you a future filled with hope and supernatural resources. Visualization is a powerful tool in this process. See yourself living in the abundance you desire, making wise decisions, experiencing freedom from debt, and walking in favor. Allow yourself to feel the emotions associated with having already received what God has promised. This trains your subconscious to align with a mindset of expectation, which prepares you to recognize and act on opportunities when they arrive. Guard your mind carefully, for what you allow in shapes your perception and your energy. Avoid consuming media conversations or environments that reinforce limitation, fear, or negativity, and instead immerse yourself in content, teachings, and associations that inspire faith, courage, and vision. Reading stories of financial breakthroughs, testimonies of divine provision, and scriptures that affirm God's abundant nature can recondition your thought patterns and strengthen your ability to believe in possibilities beyond the natural. Discipline your mind to focus on solutions rather than problems, possibilities rather than limitations, and provision rather than lack. When challenges arise, view them as opportunities for growth, strategy, and divine creativity rather than as obstacles that will hold you back. Gratitude is a critical aspect of an abundant mindset. Recognize and give thanks for what you already have, acknowledging the ways God has provided in the past, because gratitude expands your capacity to receive more. Fear, comparison, and jealousy are enemies of abundance, and releasing these emotions allows your mind to operate freely in the sphere of expectation. Affirm that God is your source, that He is able to multiply resources, and that you are equipped to steward increase with wisdom, integrity, and discernment. Take practical steps that reinforce an abundant mindset, such as setting goals, making investment decisions, and seeking opportunities with confidence rather than hesitation. Your actions must match your mental expectations. Faith without action remains dormant, but a mind prepared for abundance naturally produces decisive and effective steps toward manifestation. Repetition and consistency are key, for the mind must be rewired over time to replace scarcity-based thinking with a framework of faith, hope, and expectation. Prayer, meditation, and worship also align the mind with God's perspective, helping you see beyond limitations, hear divine instruction, and embrace the possibilities He is orchestrating on your behalf. Surround yourself with influences that support this mindset, including mentors, peers, and communities that reinforce abundance thinking and kingdom-focused prosperity. Understand that sudden wealth requires a mind that is not only expecting increase, but also capable of handling it with maturity, clarity, and purpose. Let go of limiting narratives, forgive yourself for past financial mistakes, and embrace the reality that abundance is your divine inheritance, meant to be experienced fully, joyfully, and responsibly. Recognize that God's provision is not accidental or random, but intentional, and that your preparation of the mind directly affects your ability to see, claim, and steward the sudden wealth He has spoken over your life. By cultivating thoughts of expectation, possibilities, and divine favor, you are positioning yourself to receive, multiply, and operate in a financial season that reflects God's glory, wisdom, and supernatural timing, reinforcing that every decision, declaration, and mental adjustment is a step toward manifesting the wealth that aligns with His perfect plan and purpose, ensuring that your mind is ready to recognize, embrace, and thrive in the abundance that is on its way. Aligning your actions with the opportunities God is opening is essential for experiencing sudden wealth, because divine favor does not manifest in isolation. It requires active participation, obedience, and responsiveness to the doors that He orchestrates in your life. Many people pray, fast, and declare promises, but when opportunities arise, hesitation, doubt, or misalignment prevents them from receiving the full measure of blessing. God is always orchestrating circumstances, encounters, and openings that are perfectly timed for your breakthrough. And your responsibility is to recognize, respond, and act in alignment with His guidance. Begin by cultivating spiritual sensitivity to recognize the signals that indicate divine opportunities. These may come through inspired ideas, dreams, prophetic words, coincidences, or sudden shifts in circumstances that seem too precise to be random. Be vigilant and aware, for opportunities often present themselves subtly, requiring discernment and the courage to act decisively. Aligning your actions begins with obedience in small matters, because faithfulness in minor opportunities demonstrates your readiness for greater increase. When you see a chance to step out in investment, partnership, skill development, or innovation, Respond with courage, knowing that God has prepared the way and equipped you for success. Avoid procrastination, fear, or overanalysis, which can delay breakthrough and cause you to miss the perfect timing of God's favor. Your actions must match the level of faith you are declaring, speaking prosperity without stepping into the opportunities that accompany it creates stagnation. Develop a strategy that aligns with both your spiritual direction and practical responsibilities. Evaluate the opportunities presented, seek wisdom through prayer and counsel, and then act boldly, trusting that God will guide each step and provide resources, insight, and protection along the way. Stewardship is also a key part of alignment, for opportunities often come with responsibility, and God tests your readiness to handle increase through the decisions you make in these moments. Maintain integrity, diligence, and excellence in every action, for your character determines the sustainability and multiplication of wealth once it arrives. Aligning with opportunity also means cultivating flexibility and adaptability, for divine openings may not always look like what you expected, and the ability to pivot and respond with faith is crucial to receiving the full measure of favor. Take initiative in areas where you see potential, even if the path is unclear, knowing that God often blesses the proactive, not just the reactive. Avoid waiting for perfect conditions, for divine timing rarely coincides with human convenience. Readiness requires stepping forward in faith with the resources, skills, and insight you currently possess. Surround yourself with partners, mentors, and supporters who share your vision and reinforce alignment with God's opportunities. Networking, collaboration, and the sharing of ideas can accelerate the manifestation of increase, as God often uses relationships to open doors and provide insight that you could not have achieved alone. Discernment is vital. Not every opportunity is from God, and aligning your actions requires the wisdom to distinguish between what is a strategic blessing and what is a distraction or potential setback. Pray for clarity and confirmation before committing to actions, trusting that the Spirit will guide your steps and illuminate the right path. Every action, no matter how small, should reflect intentionality, purpose, and a heart aligned with God's will. For sudden wealth is not simply about accumulation, but about positioning yourself to operate in the fullness of divine increase with wisdom, stewardship, and impact. Take practical steps consistently, such as creating plans, setting goals, investing in skills, and remaining disciplined in daily habits that support growth and readiness. Recognize that alignment is an ongoing process, requiring daily attention to your thoughts, intentions, and behaviors. Avoid distractions, negativity, and complacency, and instead cultivate focus, faith, and responsiveness. Celebrate progress, no matter how incremental, for God honors diligence, persistence, and obedience, and each step taken in alignment with divine opportunity reinforces your position to receive sudden wealth. Understand that your actions are part of a larger spiritual equation, where faith, readiness, obedience, and strategic decision-making combine to unlock supernatural increase. By positioning yourself through consistent, purposeful action, you are signaling to heaven that you are ready, willing, and capable of walking into the opportunities He has prepared, reinforcing that divine favor requires not just desire, but movement, that prosperity flows to those who align effort with opportunity, and that sudden wealth arrives most powerfully when preparation meets action, insight meets courage, and obedience meets opportunity. Stewarding your resources to maximize breakthroughs is a vital principle in receiving sudden wealth, because God's blessings are not merely about acquisition, but about responsible management, multiplication, and strategic deployment of what has been entrusted to you. Many people experience delay or frustration because they receive opportunities, gifts, or finances without a plan to steward them effectively, and as a result, favor can be diminished or mismanaged. Stewardship begins with recognizing that everything you have, time, talents, finances, influence, is ultimately a gift from God, and that you are accountable for how you use it. Begin by conducting an honest assessment of your current resources, identifying areas where waste, mismanagement, or neglect may have occurred, and committing to take control in alignment with divine guidance. Establish priorities that reflect your vision, purpose, and the principles of kingdom advancement, ensuring that every decision honors God and contributes to your long-term prosperity. Financial literacy is a critical component of stewardship. Educate yourself about budgeting, saving, investing, and multiplying resources, and seek counsel from trustworthy, experienced advisors who operate with integrity. Avoid impulsive spending or reactive decisions that compromise the potential for increase, and instead practice discipline, planning, and foresight. Stewardship also involves investing your resources strategically, positioning them in ways that produce maximum return, whether materially, spiritually, or relationally. Recognize that God often blesses opportunities through resources, and careful management ensures that you are prepared to take advantage of openings when they arise. Generosity is another key element. Giving with a willing heart demonstrates faith, gratitude, and understanding of the cycle of divine provision, and it positions you to receive multiplied blessing. These offerings and acts of kindness are not just obligations, but spiritual strategies that invite favor, multiply influence, and unlock supernatural increase. Cultivate discernment to identify investments, partnerships, and opportunities that align with your calling, values, and vision, avoiding distractions or ventures that do not contribute to the long-term goals God has placed before you. Stewardship also applies to non-financial resources such as time, energy, and relationships. Allocate these wisely to maximize productivity, focus, and the fulfillment of your purpose. Protect your environment and associations, for the people and spaces around you influence your capacity to multiply what God has entrusted. Create systems, routines, and structures that facilitate efficiency, organization, and accountability, ensuring that every resource is directed toward growth, impact, and preparation for the sudden increase that is coming. Embrace a mindset of multiplication rather than consumption. Think strategically about how each resource can produce returns beyond its original value, whether through entrepreneurship, innovation, or kingdom-focused initiatives. Cultivate patience and long-term thinking, recognizing that sudden wealth does not always arrive instantly, but that consistent, wise stewardship prepares the soil for explosive, sustainable growth. Track progress, measure outcomes, and adjust strategies as needed, staying sensitive to the Spirit's guidance and the unfolding of divine timing. Avoid envy, comparison, or mismanagement influenced by others' success, and instead focus on building what God has specifically designed for you. Recognize that every dollar, minute, or talent invested with intention and wisdom contributes to a momentum that amplifies breakthroughs. Pray for insight and divine guidance in decision-making, asking God to reveal opportunities for multiplication and to protect against missteps that could hinder favor. Celebrate milestones and progress, acknowledging God's hand in every increase, no matter how small, for gratitude reinforces stewardship and positions you for greater acceleration. Understand that stewardship is not merely a practical exercise, but a spiritual posture that communicates readiness, responsibility, and alignment with God's purposes. By managing your resources with diligence, wisdom, and faith, you are not only preparing for sudden wealth, but also ensuring that the wealth you receive will be sustainable, impactful, and a testimony of God's provision and guidance. The act of stewarding effectively becomes a catalyst for divine multiplication, transforming ordinary resources into extraordinary outcomes, reinforcing that the way you handle what you have now directly affects the blessings, breakthroughs, and sudden wealth that are on their way, and that responsible, faith-driven management of every resource positions you to operate in the fullness of increase, multiply opportunities, and manifest God's favor in ways that surpass human expectation. Speaking, declaring, and expecting the manifestation of wealth is one of the most powerful ways to activate the promises of God in your life, because your words carry creative power. Your declarations align your spirit with heaven, and your expectation sets the stage for the miraculous to move. Many people pray silently or hope in secret, but God moves favorably when faith is vocalized bold and consistent, and when it is accompanied by a confident expectation that His promises are already at work. Begin by intentionally speaking over your finances, your opportunities, and your future, declaring that doors of increase are opening, that resources are flowing, and that sudden wealth is manifesting in alignment with God's will. Your declarations must be rooted in faith, grounded in God's word, and spoken with authority, knowing that what you say with conviction has the power to shape your reality, influence circumstances, and draw supernatural provision. Expectation is the spiritual posture that transforms words into results, for without expecting manifestation, declarations remain dormant, and favor often passes by those who are unready or hesitant. Cultivate unwavering belief that God is already moving, that the wealth you are speaking into existence is already being prepared in unseen ways, and that every step you take is directed toward the fulfillment of His promises. Speak as though the blessing has already arrived, for when your speech reflects certainty rather than doubt, it aligns your heart, mind, and actions with the reality you are inviting, creating a spiritual magnetism that attracts opportunity, insight, and divine acceleration. Consistency in declaration is critical. Repeat affirmations daily. Speak words of faith over your finances multiple times a day, and let your language reflect expectation, gratitude, and alignment with God's favor. Pair your declarations with prayer, asking the Spirit to reinforce, guide, and multiply your words, ensuring that your speech becomes a conduit for supernatural intervention. Be bold in your words, rejecting fear, hesitation, or embarrassment, and recognize that the spiritual realm responds to audacious faith expressed openly, courageously, and persistently. Speak blessings over yourself, your household, your career, and every avenue where God's increase is intended to flow, declaring that nothing will hinder or delay the manifestation of wealth prepared for you. Expect that opportunities will present themselves in ways that may seem unusual or unexpected, and that divine provision often comes through doors you could not have foreseen, reinforcing the need to speak with confidence and anticipate the movement of God in every area of life. Your words must be consistent with your actions. Speak boldly while acting strategically, aligning each decision with the declarations you make. For God honors both faith-filled speech and obedient behavior. Guard your tongue from negativity, complaints, or fear-driven words that contradict your declarations, for every word you speak carries weight, either building toward your breakthrough or creating resistance. Surround yourself with those who encourage faith, support your vision, and reinforce a culture of expectation as community and confirmation amplify the power of your spoken words. Journaling your declarations, recording your spoken affirmations, and reviewing them regularly reinforces your mindset, strengthens your resolve, and reminds you of the promises you are activating through speech. Gratitude should accompany every declaration, acknowledging God's faithfulness, provision, and past miracles, for thanksgiving multiplies the spiritual atmosphere, creating fertile ground for increase. Recognize that speaking wealth into existence is not about arrogance or presumption, but about aligning your spirit, your faith, and your expectation with the divine plan, demonstrating readiness, obedience, and receptivity. Declare not only the arrival of wealth, but also your capacity to steward, manage, and multiply it, acknowledging that abundance is always accompanied by responsibility and purpose. Speak creatively, audaciously, and confidently, refusing to be limited by your current circumstances, past failures, or external opinions, understanding that God's supernatural provision often defies natural logic and human calculation. Your words are seeds planted in the spiritual realm, and with consistent expectation, faith, and alignment, they will grow, attract, and manifest into tangible increase, opening doors, influencing opportunities, and drawing resources from unexpected directions. Expectation amplifies the effectiveness of declaration, for when you truly anticipate the manifestation of wealth, your energy, focus, and actions converge in alignment with God's favor, creating a momentum that carries you toward breakthrough. Recognize that speaking, declaring, and expecting is an ongoing, daily discipline, a spiritual exercise that keeps you connected to divine purpose, reinforces your faith, and ensures that sudden wealth is not only promised, but actively drawn into your life, manifesting through words, actions, alignment, and unwavering expectation in ways that surpass human understanding, demonstrating that divine increase responds to bold, consistent, and expectant proclamation, and that your declarations are a critical catalyst in the arrival, multiplication, and sustainability of the wealth God has ordained for your life.